May I introduce you to Mr. David Nolan?
Yeah, you're right.
Famed author. David put me on the television in the early 2000s. David produced and directed a television programme about the Sex Pistols appearing at the Leicester Free Trade Hall in June of 1976. And he then wrote a book about it, and we've become very good friends over the years. And we've done...
Such good friends that you've come into the audience and said, "You wouldn't mind interviewing me on stage?" No chance.
He is on the first reserve. I don't know, what would you call him? The elusive Mick Middles has failed to show. We don't know what's happened to Mick. We only hope that he's okay.
Indeed.
So, more than adequate replacement, David Nolan.
Right. Very good. So, take your seats. Come and gather up if you like. There's a seat going there where I was sitting, so anyone who wants to sit down, you're very well to sit on my seat.
Just so I keep me warm for you, don't you?
That as well.
If there's any girls near who I'm not going to see, you can sit on my knee.
Yes. Thanks, Dad. Right, so... I can remember things from the 70s and the 80s, literally week by week, day by day, month by month basis. My memory is completely sharp. The 90s, to me, is a bit... I find it hard to grab hold of. How have you managed to grab hold of the 90s here?
Research, in a word. I think that's fairly common, Dave. Speaking to a lot of people in there, they were obsessive about the 70s and 80s, and the 90s, somehow they ended up a little bit adrift. I think a lot of it was the sheer volume of music that we were bombarded with in the 90s, because you'd got the CD revolution going on. You'd got so many sort of genres and sub-genres vying for attention over that period. And of course, when CDs became a thing, the record labels very cunningly and very effectively, it worked on me, made you go out and rebuy records that you'd already got, because CDs lasted forever and they were miles better than vinyl totals. And you could smear them with jam and they still played. They were fantastic things. And now they're worthless. And records are worth a fortune. So I think people got cut adrift. There was just that much going on. But when you look, the quality was incredible. For the 70s and the 80s books, I compiled, obviously there's 100 entries for each year, and I would compile probably 200 as a short list and whittle down to the 100. For the 90s, there were some years where I've got 500 entries that I needed to whittle down into 100. There was an absolute deluge of really good music.
Okay, so I've literally just finished the 80s one this morning, and you know full well what I was doing when I was reading it.
Yes.
On the toilet, because that's where I like to read it, because they're perfect for me. So I literally finished it this morning, and then... But when the 80s goes into the 90s, the 60s and the 70s, the 70s, the 80s, I know it's nonsense, but it feels very decadent.
Yeah.
Looking back, it feels like, bang, the 80s, bang, the 70s. But the 90s, it kind of...
Ooze.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's the Strange Ways Riot is the first thing I think of. But why does the 90s feel like it's hard to grab hold of? It's a bit misty.
I don't know. It's I don't know why it's so kind of unloved. I think after the brightness and the brashness of the 80s, it was a bit of a come down. I mean, I didn't find it a come down. I just thought people had got fucking sane and started dressing normally again. You know, thought the 80s were horrific. I fucking hated much of the 80s, but it was more subdued. You know, a lot of the music that I liked in the 90s is really, really well produced, and it feels incredibly clean. The 80s, in comparison, you've got that big 80s sound, and it was gloss, and it was fucking fucking syrup. You know, it was much more subtle, and I think it didn't stand out. It wasn't as brash and look at me as the 80s.
Well, brash and look at me can be kind of fun though, can't it?
Oh, it can be fun, but does it last?
Okay.
I think a lot of this stuff lasts, you know. I don't know. I'd sooner listen to, you know, and that's not just so, but just as an analogy, I'd sooner listen to Bonnie Prince Billy than Culture Club. You know, there's more to it.
Okay, so the broad terms, if we were making our I Heart the 90s documentary tomorrow, we were interviewing you for it, and something I've done, you know, kind of done with you in the past, it would be, the broad strokes are Manchester, Oasis versus Blur, dance music, you know, these very, very broad strokes. How much of that is in here?
Well, there's absolutely no Oasis in there. No, you know, and I tried to be very even. I actually tried to shoehorn Oasis into it because I couldn't diminish their cultural impact. Sure. You know, so I tried to shoehorn some Oasis tracks into it, and I listened to Oasis, but I could never get all the way through a full track. It just fucking bored me to death and made me want to fucking puke. That's fucking low to do it. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not being even handed anymore.
Doesn't matter.
As for dance music, I mean, most of what I liked in the 90s, broadly speaking, was dance music, but it was in so many genres. You know, just because something is played on machines rather than guitars and bass and drums and things doesn't mean it all should be lumped into one pot. But I mean, as I came here today, I was listening to Basement Jaxx, who, well, are one of my favourite bands. Daft Punk were my favourite band. You know, it's practically everything that I really loved was of that nature during the 90s.
Okay, because obviously I literally have come up from my seat to do this. Well, I thought, how are you going to do this, David? I know, I'll pick a page at random and I'll choose 2 songs from the page and just to see and just throw them at you as to why. Because one of the things that slightly frustrated me about the 80s book is that there was songs in there where you were kind of saying, well, this is probably the least shit David Bowie record of this period.
Yeah, but it was still one of the best 100 of the year. Yeah.
Well, it's still there, which I found quite annoying. I was sitting on the toilet, shouting at you.
Yeah, I'm shouting at you now. In the 70s, I was making the same point about the Who's record.
Sure.
Because they weren't as good as they'd been in the 60s, but they were still, you know, joined together was still one of the best 100 singles in 1972.
Okay, so I've literally opened the page here and I'm going to choose 2, okay? You're Gorgeous, Baby Bird.
Yeah. It's really good because it's great pop and it's also got something to say and it's a little bit subversive and it's Nolan. Fancy not doing it? I like it.
By way of contrast, Trash, Suede.
That's just fucking great. The early Suede records, called Suede, you know, they startled you. And again, there was a hint of the subversive in what they were doing. There was something slightly seedy and sexual about it all, you know, and druggy, and they were necessary. Guitar bands, I think, have all got a bit dour and a bit either plinky plonky, bedwetting shite or sort of too grungy and American. And so Suede added some flair, some zip and zap.
Yeah. I can remember seeing it for the first time
Yeah.
and thinking, what the fuck is that? What is that? I felt like I needed a little shower afterwards.
Yeah.
Because it felt kind of glamorous and seedy at the same time.
Yeah.
And being quite...
Yeah, you felt a little bit soiled.
Yeah, I've been genuinely slightly shocked by it, which is obviously no bad thing. Let's do it again. Okay. I'll tell you what. Jealousy, Pet Shop Boys. Have they had their time by now, Pet Shop Boys?
Same thing that you were saying earlier about David Bowie. The Pet Shop Boys, yeah, by the 90s, they were probably a little bit past the best. The best work had come by and large in the 80s, but they still make great records. And I mean, I saw the Pet Shop Boys. I saw them in the 90s and they were fucking sensational. And anybody who's never seen the Pet Shop Boys, if you get a chance, go and see them because they're fucking incredible. They put on a show. And I saw them in London a couple of years ago at Hyde Park. And I just danced around and I was jumping around and it was joyous. And I'll tell you this is just a little aside. It was this big all-day thing. So there's the Pet Shop Boys, the Banana, Status Quo, and Simply Red. And Mick Aatma put me on the guest list and got me this nice backstage pass with all sort of privileges. And I misbehaved. And these children in security guards outfits, about 10 of them surrounded me and they got me up against the fence and they told me I was jeopardising the whole event. There's 200,000 people there. I felt fucking great in the 60s jeopardising an event of 200,000 people. That fucking puller off fire.
What did you do?
Right.
What did you do?
I'm not telling you.
Do one more off a single page. Motorcycle Emptiness, the Manics.
Yeah, the Manics, again, at that point, they were just on the cusp of a change. What I liked about the Manics mostly was, whereas Oasis and lots of other bands dumbed down for popularity, the Manics tried to educate, and they'd always got something to say. Sometimes it was clumsy, certainly in the earlier days, but they were always trying to communicate and make music that had some substance and importance to it. And that's the pivotal record for the Manics in many ways, not a cycle.
And also when Richie was there, because I remember seeing them live, they had that same I Feel Dirty glamour that Suede had as well, but it feels like a...
Yeah, it was even dirtier.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, less glamour, but more dirt.
And you could see, you're so close, you could see the arms and self-harm he'd done. It was quite shocking.
Yeah, disturbing, yeah.
Again, same page, last time, Jump Around, House of Pain.
Yeah, well, obviously that is the opposite of the Manics. That is just fun. And there's always room for fun, particularly in dance records, where the rhythm and the way it makes you feel is more important than any lyrical content. And Jump Around was just a fucking great party record.
I'll say to you now what I was normally, when you say, oh, any questions, and then I normally stick my hand up first, to get things rocking and rolling. Yeah. I'm going to do that.
I'll fuck you up and you can go and do it.
I can shout it from there. I'll say to you what I was going to say from my seat, which is, I'll tell you this now, okay, because I've done a bit of music writing, and music is a difficult thing to write about, and it's difficult to explain to someone who's maybe not heard a song before what it makes you feel like. It's quite a difficult thing to do. So to do it 3,000 times is a massive, massive achievement, and so you should get a flipping round of applause just for doing that. To do it and keep the writing kind of springy and lively and fizzy and things like that is very, very, very hard to do. So yeah, you have another one, go on. Knock yourself out. So honestly, I can't overstate this. It's a massive, massive achievement to do that. I tried to do one years and years ago. It wasn't about music, it was about films. And I managed 400. And I was ready to top this out because it was driving me mad.
You repeat yourself, don't you? You have to go and edit yourself.
And I was putting things up on the wall saying, don't say this because you've already said it again. So how have you managed to keep this rocking and rolling then for over 3,000 entries?
I don't know.
That's a terrible answer.
I did all the writing during the lockdowns for the 3 books. They were all written during the lockdowns. So they were a great way of keeping me sane, and I didn't have that many distractions. So that helped in a curious way. But I was very conscious of what you're saying, of repeating yourself, and I try wherever possible to put a little bit of myself into it, which is why between the chapters things are important to me, because I feel that it gives the whole book context.
And then the other, because I can't ask one question, I've got to have a follow-up question, right, which is what I was going to say, which is, imagine that we're all here in 1 year's time, and the publishers, you can have this, publishers, if you're in the house by the way, you can have this idea for nothing, have put all 3 books into one ginormous tome. It's very popular at the moment, apparently, to put all your books together in one big tome. But you've got the opportunity to take some stuff out and put some stuff back in. Now, don't say, oh, I wouldn't change anything, David, because I don't believe you. What would you take in and what would you take out of any of them?
I couldn't tell you what I'd take out particularly, but there are omissions that I know now. In the 90s one, there's a song that Ian Hunter wrote and recorded about his great friend Mick Ronson, who died. And that should have been in it, and it's one of my favourite records. And I don't know why it isn't in it. Swerve by Dub Sex should have been in it.
Yeah.
You know, and you realise after, when it's too late, that you've omitted these things. So there's lots of things that go in, but I couldn't particularly tell you what to go out. Number 100 and number 99, I suppose.
Okay. And then, before we join shortly, the obvious final question is, okay, what's after this?
I think I'm retired from writing, I'm retired from singing.
The hardest game in the world, isn't it?
No, it isn't. I love being sort of idle. Sort of.
And is that because there's nothing worth... I found this, because I've not written any music books for quite a few years now, because I found a lot of music books now are kind of conceptual. It is, let's track down the people who do this, or let's find all the people who are on the C86 cassette and stuff like that. The kind of conceptual music books, which is a popular thing at the moment. And I don't think there's a single thing or band or whatever that's worth particularly writing about.
Yeah, I did discuss on the telephone with the elusive Middles the other day. He said to me, I'm thinking of writing again. And I sort of proposed in a not a firm way. I said, would you consider collaborating on a book with me about music, not about the obvious things, but about the hidden bands from Manchester, the ones who haven't made it, and we would interview people and find out about the bands and what they felt after it had all ended, etc. But I mean, there was a room full of people, Fat Tracks, Poppycock, Two Coy Car. You know, we could write about all these bands, and that might be interesting. I mean, it probably only have very localish interest, but maybe not, I don't know. But I certainly think there's been a whole lot of music from this city that deserved a wider audience than it ever received. So that's a sort of idea that's slowly percolating. I don't know if it'll come to fruition, but if I'm right, that might well be.
Yeah, if we're like long dead, then.
Brave words. Right, so do you want to fill this seat, shall we?
We're going to have another guest speaker now, and this is somebody I've known.
He knows about this one, does he?
He does, yes. Yes, we've discussed it. He doesn't know what he's going to talk about, I think. I have known him since we were both 11 years old, and we're both now 66 or 67, so I've known him for 55 years, and we were both, when I first knew him, obsessed with music. We both loved Mungo Jerry. If anybody remembers Mungo Jerry. And he went on to have a successful career. He was the guitar player in James during their sort of golden period of iconic hits and the high watermark of their creativity. Could I have Larry Gott, please? Oh, you know what I like.
I do, man. Can I get through that?
You want this bleeding gold, watch it?
Yeah, okay.
I want to tell you a little story about when Larry and I were at school, and I told Larry this a couple of months ago when I saw him, and he forgave me. Do you know when you're indulging in some creative process, and you know the germ of the idea is good, but what you're doing is absolutely fucking crap, and you try harder and harder because you know the idea's right to make it good. And Larry and I were in an arts class at school, and the arts teacher was a fellow called Steve Bell, who was one of the few teachers alongside Nick Longloss who had got a good deal of respect for. Nick was a really nice fella, firm socialist principles, and he wasn't quick with the slipper, which a lot of the teachers were in those days. And he was a good teacher. Anyway, I was working on this fucking painting, and it was driving me fucking mental. And I kept trying, and it was really frustrating. And I should have just ripped it up and started again, but you don't, you work it out. And Larry walked past, and inadvertently, with his blazer, knocked fucking paint all over my painting. And I went ballistic. And I said, God, you bastard! I picked up his paints and threw them all over him. And Steve Bell collared us, and he was fucking blood red. He was fuming because there was all people's course words for their exams on the walls and things like that that could have damaged. And of course Larry's completely innocent, he's not done it. But Steve Bell, who was very rarely slipped at anybody, took me and Larry afterwards, and he fucking thrashed us.
Oh.
And he's never held it against me. That's friendship.
It's not left me with any wounds. I don't have a horrific memory of that.
Oh, you liked school, didn't you? He liked school, I fucking hated it.
Yeah, no, I did. I didn't realise that you were going through such a hard time at the time.
Yeah.
You know, you just...
So you hide it, don't you? That's what people do when they're having a hard time.
Yeah. It was just something that you play at.
I've only just learned to play. I'm more playful now than I ever was when I was young.
Yeah. No, come on.
It's true. It's true. I'm very intense. Very intense. But you hide it, don't you? You disguise it. I do things like this is early 70s. Comprehensive fucking school, sending you off to be factory fodder in a fucking working class shithole with everybody's closed-minded and fucking bigoted, you know. And I've got fucking bright dyed red hair and plucked eyebrows and prancing around, you know. It's a disguise. That's what it is. It's a disguise. Anyway, go on, talk, Larry.
It was a completely different experience for me, I think. School was just... I was just making sense of shit. I wasn't as aware as you were during those times. I know I was just like in this kind of bubble trying to make sense of what this existence was. I didn't really know what it was.
But because you thought that, you went off and did things, which was good. Another thing that happened between Larry and I, from many years ago, this was after we'd left school, we'd both be probably 17, and I had a little band. This had been 1974, and I had a band with two friends, Robert and Steve, and we played songs by the Kinks and the Who and Eddie Cochran and the Beatles. I'd say we were a garage band, but we practiced in Robert's dad's stuck in very posh house in his front room and drank his creme de menthe. And Larry was miles more accomplished as a guitar player than Robert or Steve, and one of them had met Larry, and we needed a drummer, and Larry turned up with this drummer and drank creme de menthe with us, and we ran through some songs. I remember we played Johnny Be Good, but they played it because I fucking hate musicians, as you know that. They played it the way people did in 1974 if you was in fucking mud or shwaddy. We took all the fucking bollocks out of it, played too many notes, and at the end of it, everybody's happy. And Larry said we could pool our resources and get gigs on the cabaret circuit. And the two lads I'd been with, Rob and Steve, were all up for it, all smiles. And they all looked at me and I said, you can fuck right off if you think I'm being a fucking cabaret singer. But Larry, as he's explained to me since, needed to go and do this because as a musician you need to play. And that was the place to play. That was where he learned his chops. He wouldn't have ended up in James unless he'd gone playing the cabaret stuff first and learning his craft. So I do understand that. But I still wouldn't ever be in a fucking cabaret band or a fucking tribute band.
I just always have lower standards than you do.
Larry, can I...
The drummer, by the way, so we've got the guitar player out of James, the drummer was Mike Lee, who was later in the ball with Kel Pretty.
Oh no.
So we were a super group before our fucking time.
Ian, should we ask about the job in hand here?
Yeah,
we are talking about the 90s. Sorry, I'm David, by the way. Lovely to see you.
Hello, David.
Hello, nice to meet you. I think we might have met. Did you do the gig on top of Piccadilly Radio back in the olden times?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was there because I worked at Piccadilly. So we have sort of...
It was part of the day's work, wasn't it?
Very much was.
I know. The difference between being in a band and producing the music, as opposed to being a listener, an enjoyer, an imbiber of music, is the kind of the commercial death knell that it brings. You're there that day to produce the music that you produce, partly because you love it, partly because it's what you've been aiming for, but also it's partly because it's contractual, partly because you've made promises, there's money riding on this thing, and it's your income. All of those things become the driving forces, right? And it's one of the reasons why I can see so many musicians who become successful end up in psychological problems. Because the thing that got you into it in the first place, which is an inquisitive nature, the love of music, the desire to create and things like that, you start to lose that when the other side starts to take over.
We spoke about this recently, and where I was asking Larry about the shittiest television programme he's ever had. He was on a few apparently. And I went away and wrote a song called The Crackerjack Years, all about Larry's experiences. I'll show it to you sometime.
So to address the 90s, it was the success of the 90s that changed, what shall we say, a naive, yearning, wannabe musician into becoming the thing that he'd yearned for. And whilst the success of that was exciting, the downside of it, you know, rubbed off. I was just talking to my motto before, and no, sorry, Tim Lyons. I was talking to Tim Lyons, and saying how all the years I was in James, I hardly ever picked up the guitar, other than to produce something that we're contractually obliged to do, or whether it was part of the creative process. But since then, since leaving James, I've got a guitar by the side of the settee now, and a little amp, and I'm jamming along to whatever's on the TV and things like that. The joy is like, I'm playing guitar for the first time, I'm thinking about, I don't know, 35 years.
That's lovely. Right. We're not just from a winter. We want some audience participation. So if anybody's got any questions, please feel free to ask David, Larry, or yourself.
Now, this would have been me. I would have started this up on the audience, but I've already shot me load. Yeah. So we can't see the yellow there. Yeah, literally.
Yeah, so it's anonymous. This is really exciting for you. You can ask all sorts of
who would like to ask Ian particularly? And
personal questions, and we'll never know what he's asking.
Why did you have all those security people around you?
Because I was abusing the privilege, I was sneaking the proletariat into the posh fucking enclosure because I don't like elitism. That's right.
Now I'm sorting that one out.
Thank you.
Who do you think that should have been bigger, Mudhoney or Nirvana?
I presume you're asking it because you think that Mudhoney should have been bigger than Nirvana. I personally think Nirvana were much better than Mudhoney. They've got in Kurt Cobain a writer with a melodic gift that transcended.
He's a good person as well.
Yeah. So I like Mudhoney, but I think Nirvana's music will last longer and people will appreciate it and love it more.
And is that reflected in here?
Yeah, it is reflected in there, yeah.
And is there other stuff that I was thinking before, what's the record from the 90s like that I probably played the most? It's probably Marion's first album.
Whose?
Marion.
Yeah.
I love that album. Fantastic. And I still play it. I still like it.
Brilliant.
And is that kind of 90s represented in here as well? Or are you going to have to put that
I don't live in Marion now, so no, it isn't represented, David. I don't know, there'll be stuff in
Not
there.
really, sorry.
I really don't answer, because we all have blind spots, don't you know? So no, I genuinely do not know who's there.
I saw Marion the first time, and I worked in Granada at the time, and I rushed into work and said, we've got to get these lads on, because they're like you two, only better looking. And they're going to be massive.
That's not fucking hard.
And we got them on very, very early doors, and it didn't work out for a variety of reasons. But we all have those little flames that we carry, and for me, it's Marion.
No. Regarding Nirvana, I'm not used to doing these kind of things. I don't think I've never actually.
It's a guitar in his hand. He feels naked.
Yeah, I do, and I've not done these Q&A things or anything like that, and I'm no repartee wit, but I do have the story about Nirvana, and I can tell it to you, hopefully without coming across like a, you know, like.
Do it.
So. We were booked on to do Top of the Pops. So we turn up during the day, and one of the other bands who were on is Nirvana. And Kurt has lost his voice. He's got this really, he's got this problem. And our lead singer, Tim, who is the man who likes herbal remedies rather than pharmaceuticals. He offered Kurt to give him a throat massage and a herbal tea that a celestial seasonings herbal tea called throat coat, which he believed to coat the vocal cords and make him sing better, and he may have done. I don't know. I never imbibed myself. But Kurt graciously declined the offer from Tim. And Tim asked, well, what are you going to do then? Because you've lost your voice. And he says, I don't know, I'll come up with something. And then he went on that night, and you sing live, usually, to a backing track on top of the pops. And we had the afternoon rehearsal. And for Nirvana, it didn't sound very good at all. And then when it came to the evening performance and they rolled the tape, and Kurt just dropped it from that high resonant frequency that he exhibits and inhabits on that track, and he just dropped it right down and sung it in his really low voice. And so to answer Tim's question of what you're going to do about it, he made a legend.
Yes, sir.
That's the story of one of those iconic TV moments.
The 90s. Where's the ball? 1990s.
Anybody else got anything to inquire?
Yeah, it's a three-part question.
All right.
Here we go.
Number one, this is for the interviewee. Do you remember James Stanage?
For me? Yeah, I do remember James Stanage. Which of the 7,000 stories would you like me to tell you?
No, was he like a massive racist or?
Not massive racist. No, not I'm aware of. I'll tell you a story about James Stanage. I used to work the early shift at Piccadilly Radio. And
He was anti-Semitic.
I used to come on at 5 o'clock in the morning and finish at 12. So at 12:05, I used to go drinking with James Stanage. And I would drink as long as I could, till around about 5 o'clock, something like that. Then James would nip into the office, and then James would carry on drinking then until around about 9:45. And then he'd go to the office and get about 4 special brews, and then he would drink them through his show, and then he'd go to the press club. And then he would do this day in, day out, for decades. And he still looks better than us three all put together. He's not of this planet. He is not of this planet. The amount he's shifted over the decades, and extraordinary. Anyway, part two.
Nick, no, hang on, Nick, could you just stand up a second? Could you just stand up? Could you just pass me your hat?
No,
Pass me your hat, just for 1 second.
It's rare.
Just for 1 second. No, I don't know. Is this the DJ? Stop it.
Yes.
Yeah, who used to be on Piccadilly Radio?
Yes.
Well, I don't know, but when I saw this hat,
that describes him marvellously.
he's a bit of a racist.
It's a damn lie.
Is that
Part two. Too much James Stanage.
have I got the wrong person?
Too late now.
James H. Reed.
Part two, Nick.
Right, part two. How come, anywhere in your book, was it you, Ian, who shouted Judas at the pre-paid off?
That's from the 1960s. That was
That's the other way round.
And I wouldn't have shouted Judas. I'd have been fucking absolutely delighted to have seen Bob Dylan play that shit.
Well, that was a double check.
Yeah.
But,
Part three.
Number 3.
Larry, do you remember Steve Walsh?
He does, yeah.
As a classmate, I don't know anything else about him.
Right. Well, he said you were one of the best goalkeepers in the land.
Not in the land, no. Not even in East Manchester. I wasn't bad, but I was like, I got scouted for United Scout came to see us play once, but instead of me, they signed up the centre forward of the opposing team. He went on to play to Ferguson. Guy called Trevor Ross.
Yeah.
But Chloe, How come? I think I've asked you this before.
That's 4.
Because she's definitely the last bit.
Let's just say it's a 3-part question in 2 parts. Which part do you want first?
The last part.
The last part. Because she's the last chance to lose.
Right. We keep debating 2 Street. I just wondered why you didn't call it a proper college.
Call it what?
2 Street, proper school.
That was fucking horrible.
It wasn't horrible, it was beautiful.
It was fucking
I
horrible.
loved every minute of it.
I'm not, you was only there for a year when we were there.
No, you were there for a year, I was there for 30.
Just to interject for the people at the back who probably don't know, because if I wasn't me, I wouldn't know either. This gentleman, Nick Longos, was... me and Molly were in the same class together at school, and Nick was our form teacher. Which is why he's asking such pertinent questions and trying to embarrass us now. More than 50 years
I
later.
thank him every time he turns up, because I remember school as being a horrible experience. And obviously, Nick was a good teacher.
Nick was an excellent teacher. He was the only teacher who tried to convince me not to leave school without any exams. Which I did, just because I wanted to get out of there as quick as I could. Why didn't you take the chance? If you hated it that much, why did you?
Because I knew I'd fucking hate it.
You were right as well. Yeah. An apprenticeship back in them days was nothing to...
We had one teacher, this was the sort of standard. He was a maths teacher, and I forget the fella's name, but he was fucking useless. He was really bad-tempered. He was a shit teacher. He never imparted any knowledge particularly well. And we used to have maths, the first lesson after the dinner break, and there was a pub sort of adjacent to the school, the chapel house, and he clearly went in there and got fucking 3 sheets to the wind every fucking dinner. So every time he's teaching us, he's tottering around. And he was these days you could smoke indoors, and he's smoking, and he had this habit of bending the cigarette into his hand and putting his hand in his pocket. And one day the drunken old cunt fucking set himself on fire. His jacket was on fire. And this was the standard of fucking education that we received. Oh. Right, any more questions? Right.
It's not really a question, but it's just a comment on what David said, and I reflect on that. The 70s and the 80s books, and I said to Ian that I knew every song. I was very, very deeply into it. But your lifestyle is a slightly different thing you brings into it. That in the 90s, I was just a happily married man bringing children up. And what I love about this book, and this is just a recommendation for people in a way. I mean, I'm 62, I don't know how everybody else knows it. But yeah, I love the 90s music. I think every era has fantastic music. But a lot of the tunes, and Ian sent me an example of Sons of Playing tonight, I didn't know. So it's an education. Because the underbelly of the music scene from the 90s I wasn't really aware of, because I was just doing loads of other things. Where in the last 10 years or so, by doing radio and coming here and seeing Battery Act and Poppycock and all the various bands, then versions of them bands, whoever they were, I wasn't aware of. Ian was more into it deeply in the 90s than I was. So I'm just saying, in a way, it's a real great recommendation. If you want to hear a load of really great music from the 90s, and I've not even investigated the book properly yet, it's there, and get stuck in.
Right, we'll leave you on that point then, shall we? Is that okay? Have you got something to say, Neil?
No.
Just waiting.
I'm saying
it's alright. Alright, on that point then, can I have a round of applause for my guests, David Nolan and Larry Gott. And I thank you sincerely for coming out and being there. It really, this isn't glib crap. I actually fucking love seeing you people. I really do. It means something to me.